Hi, everyone. Thank you for joining. Hi, Davide.
Hi, Hannah.
We'll start in a few minutes.
Okay. Good afternoon, everybody.
Hi, Gilad.
Hi, Hannah. We have most of people who registered?
Yes, we have, and also the webinar is recorded, so people who cannot attend can see it later on our website.
Okay, great. Well, let's get going, and respect of time, those that came on time. And if I'm not mistaken, we have 45 minutes, right? So half an hour for sharing and 15 minutes for questions, live questions, some of the benefits of joining us up here. So first, a quick introduction. So my name is Gilad Glick. I'm currently in my day job. I work for Johnson & Johnson in their investment fund in Europe called JJDC. But before that, I spent a decade serving as a CEO of a company, medical device company called Itamar Medical in the sleep apnea space. And before that, 17 years in Biosense Webster, one of the electrophysiology franchises of J&J. Most of my career was in commercial roles, sales, marketing, both local and global levels. So I would say approaching 30 years of commercial experience accumulation, which of course led to the MCI, the Med Tech Commercialization Institute initiative, a nonprofit organization under 8400 or in collaboration with 8400 to help companies prepare for commercializing their medical device products, mostly in the US. Part of our initiatives and sharing is to do a monthly content webinars. We take important topics and we share them with our audience, which is MCI followers, both graduates and those that just enjoy our content. With me is Hannah Hausch, our MCI administrator and leader. And as a personal favor, I like for those who participate to actually open their cameras. That's not a must, but it gives me a great feeling that I'm not talking to the wall, but actually talking to people who join us that care about what I'm sharing. So that's up to you, but it will be highly appreciated. Thank you. I can see your eyes and your question, and that makes me feel better. Great. So the topic of today is the very strange concept and very least talked about called commission plans. It's a complex topic. It took me forever to make a lot of mistakes in various forms and shapes and successes too. And I tried to put them all together for you today in a conceptualized manner that I applied, but also some of the important learnings moving forward. Okay, so commission is the topic of today. Commission plans for Salesforce. As an administrative note, if you have questions, you don't have to wait all the way to the end of the presentation. You can actually use the chat function to write the questions there, and Hannah will indicate to me that there are questions, and I'll try to actually address them in the context of the relevant subtopic. So that would be cool. Let's get going. The first slide is about few what I call basic ground rules when you start to design your commission plan for either your direct sales force, and by the way, for a distributor sales force. That applied with very small adjustment to that context as well. And the number one item, never to forget to challenge yourself, is to ask yourself if the commission plan is aligned with what your strategy is, the commercial strategy. Is your strategy growth? That will be one type of commission plan. Is it to fast grow your install base, not your sales? Okay, that's a different business strategy. Is utilization, same store utilization, your strategy? Is pushing towards new product mix is your strategy? Is higher margin product mix is your strategy? Is gaining share from competitors your strategy? Each one of those will have a little bit of a different commission plan that will maximize the ability to achieve the business strategy. So that's number one. Number two, very important, is to remember to not pay everybody equally. That doesn't work in sales. It works in other places. But I call it to feed the eagles, right? We want to overcompensate the overachievers all the time. It's not fair, but it works. Eagles strive for excellence, so we want to give them the juice, the meat in the overachievement area, in the area that they overperform. And trust me, those eagles will find a way to get there. That's where they're eagles. And typically what we learn is that we let the underperformers dry out, means they get paid much less. That's okay, don't feel bad about it. And eventually they will leave and your sales organization will become better. Okay, so that can feed the eagles is principle number two. Principle number three is to remember to keep everything flexible. I mean, don't commit for very long term. Don't say things like, we never change the rules, or you can trust us, we always pay well. That things then bites you when the environment changes. So keep your commission plan flexible. Allow accommodation of business changes, really depend on the speed of change in your space and how what I call the labor Salesforce market, how much hot the market is. There are periods like in the last 5 years that the market is red hot and you have to do more to keep even not all the eagles, but below them. But always in the end of the cycle, like happening now, there is better labor market for employers, and then you can improve your sales force, and you need to be ready for that kind of flexibility when time arrives. And the last principle, and I cannot understate it, it's not in order of priority, is to keep the commission plan simple. If the reps cannot understand the commission plan, not the first rep, not the second rep, all the way to the last rep in your organization, quickly and clearly and every day, understand how they're going to get paid, what to do, what operates them to make more money. It's not an effective commission plan. So simplicity is super important, and it must be achievable too. If you give a commission plan in the skies and the reps don't see how they're going to make it, they will just stop, try, and wait for other opportunities or just find another job, or tell you they're working, get the base and flip burgers in the afternoon. And I'm literally talking about an actual example I had. Okay, so keep it simple. They need to understand it and they need to believe it's possible to achieve it. All important principles so far. Hannah, do you have any questions? No. Okay, those are the foundations. Okay, Now we go into the next level, which is, okay, we have the foundations. Now we need to think about strategy. And in general, the two big differentiated commission plans I've seen, and sometimes you have Salesforce with two different camps of two different types of commission plan. I'll give an example in a second, is a fast, rapid growth strategy. Most startups live in that area. And defending your position strategy, which is usually the multinationals, the distributors that been along, in their space for a long time. And there is hybrid between them, and we'll talk about that as well. When it's happening in the company cycle. Those are the two big strategies, and there are two completely unrelated commission plans to each of those strategies. Then as a layer on the strategy, we have product mix, right? And in medical device and digital health, there is the most common is the middle one, disposable or limited reusable devices, catheters, stents, packages, implants, all those things we sell that are disposable. You have to sell them every day, again and again and again. I included the limited reusable as well, those that are you can use twice or 3 times or 10 times, but then you need to buy a new one. That's the main. Then on the left and the right, you have on one side hardware and software packages. You sell once or once every 5 years. So that's a different behavior. And on the right side, you have what I call generated prescription or software utilization products. So our job is to make the doctor take an action, but not to buy. It's a little bit of a different behavior, and we'll talk about that category as well. Okay, so we have the two strategies, and we have 3 categories of products. Each of them need a little bit of different attention. Okay, and remember what we try to do here is break down a complex topic into smaller pieces, bite sizes, so we can think about it in not a very confusing fashion. Therefore, you see all those categories I'm talking about. Okay. Okay. So the first strategy, it's the simpler strategy, less applied to startups, more applied to large incumbents, but sometimes works. It's defending the share. And to defend share, when you're already in position and you already have significant amount of sales, it's typically what we call percentage-based commission. Okay, very typical. It will be 50% of the entire reward to the rep. The remuneration will be base salary. So they motivate to wake up and under not very exciting environment, because those are typically also older products. I call them boring products. They've been around. 50% of the pay is base salary and 50% of the pay is variable. Sometimes it could be even 60-40. Each percentage of sales, we sold $1 million, you get X percentage of sales. It's typically paying from the first dollar. You sold $1, you get 5%. You sold another $1, you get another 5%. Okay. Sometimes you can increase the percentage as sales goes up, but in general, what it motivates is to defend an existing business, and typically it's a large business. It's not a growing business, and if it's growing 1, 2, 3, 4%, not 30, 40, 50%. Okay, so it's not a startup thing; it's a multinational thing. And it's easy, very easy to understand. Every time you sold something, you get paid. Of course, virtually the paycheck is in the end of the month, but it's very clear and it's very concise. The big problem is that you get paid for this first dollar, the same as you get to the last dollar. So at 75% of meeting your target, you can get paid 75% of your commission and go to sleep or fishing or travel. And that's a bad thing, right? So it's only applied when the sales amount expected is big. It's easy to defend. And the most important thing is to keep everybody else out. Okay. Typically, we're not paying overachievement here because it's not important. Most of the money is coming with the sales anyway. It's typically uncapped, but that's details. And it's important to consider what I call MBO, management by objective, which is quality incentives. Those are leading indicator. Are the customers satisfied? Monthly survey, for example. Is utilization maintained? Is the more doctors using the product than last quarter or last month. So those are kind of quality measures, not just revenue dollars in that scenario. So I said it because it's important to be said, but it's not typically what startups will use, right? Because startups are not usually defending share. They're trying to penetrate into new markets or existing markets. Question on defending your share strategy when it comes to commission. No, perfect. Let's get complicated. So the commission plan that I developed over time, it's commonly used. I don't have rights, so I didn't invent it, but I saw it a lot and I tried it a lot. For growth, for penetration, for startups trying to get into a market, it's what I call the rapid growth strategy. Typically here, it's important that the base is lower than the variable, mentally wise. So if you have 200 grand to go around, make sure it's 70, 80 grand for base and 120, 130 for commission, because commission should be very significant part of their pay. It's critical. It also have a selection bias in the people you get. People that see reward as an opportunity are more aggressive, and by commission, you select bias, more aggressive reps, okay? The less aggressive, the more defending reps, those that like their stability and, protect their territory, will gradually move into the defending share type commissions, okay? So there is a very important psychological element here. The fast rapid growth, it's typically what I call quota-based, okay? It's quota-based. It means we give the rep target, and the target can change, and the target can be increased, obviously, because we're talking about growth. And the mentality is, I'm getting a target, I go and achieve my target, okay? Later on, I'll talk about other benefits it has. And here is the most important key element. We're only starting to pay at 50% of quota. Means the first half, thank you for coming, okay? The second half of the quota will pay you in a more increasing way, right? So if, for example, in the right side, if we pay, as I call it from $1, we pay 10% commission, it means for the first dollar, you get 10%, and for the last dollar, you get 10%. Here, for the first dollar, you get 0, for the last dollar, you get 20%, right? So it's putting twice the weight on the second half of the dollars versus the first half of the dollars, and it's rewarding people that get there, okay? And then on top of it, I always add, when you hit your quota, I'll then give you even more per dollar on an overachieving dollars, right? So if it's 10% per dollar in general, 20% for the second half, I'll give more than that after that, okay? Depending on my percentage. And that drives eagles. Eagles look for the overachievement and constantly trying to get to the overachievements, okay? And that's where we overperform. I typically uncap it, and if I uncap it, I cap it far out, so they think the sky is the limit. And when they tell me, Gilad, I want to make more money, I said, this is up to you. Sell more, you'll make more money, because the money is in the overachievement and it's uncapped, okay? Typically, I like quarterly targets in an annual plan. I do annual plan because most businesses have seasonality, summer, Christmas, end of Q1, when reimbursement kicks in, there is a lot of things that are seasonality built in, and we need to annualize them to accommodate seasonality, but make it quarterly so the reps have always a feeling of current. Otherwise, it's too far for them. We'll talk about all those in examples. And the last thing is true up quarterly. I'll talk about what that means. Those are the principles for rapid growth strategy. Okay. Questions so far? Okay.
Yes, Gilad, there is a question.
Yeah.
Here.
What's the question?
From Jen.
In a field team structure that include both sales and clinical support, how would you defer the comp plan to the clinical support? Great question. I'll answer it, but it's nothing to do with the commission we're talking about. Clinical force are not motivated typically by money as the number one priority. They're motivated by care, by number one priority. it's important to give them something, but it's way less significant. I typically do 80% base and 20% what I call variable. And even then, the variable could be linked to quality type measures and not directly to revenue. And also from healthcare compliance, it's very important. It's another topic. So everything we're talking today is not for clinical force. It's for sales force. Okay, and if time will allow, I can elaborate more on the clinical force. Great. Other questions? No. Okay. Let's start getting into the weeds. So quota. What is quota? Quota is the target of net sales. This is really important. So it's sales net of discount, rebates, and promotions. Otherwise, if you give them what we call gross sales, right, total sales, then they'll be very handsomely giving out discounts and rebates, and that's not good for us. So we always commission on net sales, okay? At which the rep will be granted 100% at target commission, okay? It's recommended, I don't know, there is a typo there, to break the annual number to monthly or quarterly targets. We'll talk about it in examples in a second, because the seasonality. For example, in my Itamar business, Q1, first quarter, will always very, very weak because patients waited for their out-of-pocket, for their reimbursement ceilings to be met before they elected to do sleep apnea test, right? Because it was not critical. So Q1 was always weak, Q2 was always the strongest. So I build that into the quarters, okay? Everybody knows summer in Europe is always very weak. So we have to build it into the quarter because patients are on vacation, they don't do elective procedures almost at all. And then there is always in Q4, by November, there is Thanksgiving, and December, there is Christmas. Build that into. It's not a surprise. You look at historical trends and you build them into your monthly quarters, okay? So the reps are motivated. Typical commission target for med device is between 70K on the low end and 130K on the high end. If you pay less than that, you're not in the market. If you pay more than that, you overpay, okay? I'm talking on average. Of course, there is seniority here and experience that can add up a little bit more to the numbers, but that's the range. For simple products, 70K. For complex product, invasive product, operating room time products, it's more in the 130K range. Just saying what the ranges are. And this is a target, means you achieve your target, that's how much you get paid. Okay? Questions? No.
Yes. Gilad, there is a question: in which country?
This is applied in all normal Western countries. So it's applying, I'm talking the numbers. This is the US numbers. Thank you. Those are US numbers. In Europe, I would say it's tending to have the base a bit higher. There is sometimes 13 months by law, and the commission could be somewhat lower. It's not as aggressive in the US. Those are US numbers. But in Europe, it's about 80% of it. And the mix between base and variable is slightly tighter. But in general, it's not completely different as principles. Okay. What's the benefits, right? The benefits of that plan is to allow you to continuously increase targets without increased pay, because they know what they get paid at target. And if you grow 50% or 40%, the target must grow all the time. So it's growing for $200,000 in the first year you hire the reps, to $500,000 in the second year, to $1 million in the third year. You don't want to pay them then 3 times than the first year, or pay them too little in the first year. So it allows you to be consistent with how much money they get while the business is growing dramatically. And then when you get to the third year and it's $1 million territory, you want to split the territory. And you don't want them to be upset that they lost their percentage of sales. So commission a target, address that. It doesn't matter what they target. If they achieve it, they get $70,000 or $100,000. So they're not upset when you give them growth targets that are aggressive, or you split their territories when you get to a size that is too big for them, okay? That's the number one most important benefit of commission a target versus percentage of sales, okay? It supports small starting territories. Like when you start a territory, it's not uncommon. It's nobody's there. There is no business. There are no customers in the territory. You can ask them to generate $500,000. They don't even know how to sell the product, right? They're going to learn by the training. Then they're going to try, make mistakes, and they worried they won't make money to pay the bills. So commission and target allow you to give them $100,000 target and pay them $70,000 for the first half a year. That's perfectly okay. And then the target goes to $200,000 in the second half and to $500,000 in the second year. And that's normal, okay? That's distribution is okay. And they know what they're going to get paid if they achieve the target. They feel good, they feel successful, they don't feel that they, took money they don't deserve, and it's selection bias to the right people. Incentivize growth. That's why we don't pay for the first half of the quota. Thank you for coming. You sold half your quota. That's just because we have great products. Now you become a great rep, you sell the other half of the quota, okay? Now we'll talk about how that works in reality. Focus on disposable growth, reward new accounts, and definitely feed the eagle with your achievement. I said it multiple times. What's the big disadvantages? Well, it's more complex. If you give percentage of sales, everybody knows how to calculate, finance know, reps knows, it's simple, but it doesn't have all the benefits we talked about above. That type of program require monthly recalculation. We call it true up. You'll see it in an example in a second. But if you do it, it's really beneficial. And of course, it requires constant communication and education on the reps on how the commission plan works, because it's not percentage of sales. It's a bit more complicated. But in the end, it pays for growth. Okay. Let's take the first example. So let's put some numbers on the screen to get aligned. So starting to pay at 15% of quota, that's an option. By the way, you can start paying at 30% and you can start paying at 70. I like 50 just because it's simple. Option one, which I like, it's pay per quarter. Okay, so let's take an example. Target, too many typos here. So we have target pay, let's take an example of $70,000 a year. So for one quarter, it will be a quarter of the 70,000, right? So $17,500. And for a run rate of about, $100,000 a month. So it's about, kind of a million more. And so for this, I'm sorry, mistaken. So $70,000 a year, $17,500 a quarter. It's about 5% of the sales I'm going to show you in a second. My recommendation over time is not to pay every month based on performance. It's too frequent and it's too much work. So what I learned over time is to do the first month of the quarter flat rate at 80% of target pay. At the second month, also flat rate, 80% of the target pay. And the third month to true up, to recalculate what is for the entire quarter and pay the balance, either more, or if it's negative, keep the balance for next quarter. Okay, let's give an example. This is an example of straightforward 100% each month. Let's orient on the table. So we have the target we want to achieve each month. So I gave $100,000 in January, 120 in February, and 130 in March. The actual in this example is exactly what we planned. It's a bit unrealistic, but for simplicity of the explaining the example, it's the good beginning. So every time we ask the rep to do something, they achieved exactly what we asked them, okay? Here you see the accumulation. So 100 in the first month, of course, 220 for the first 2 months and 350 for the first 3 months. That's not uncommon, by the way. Numbers, it's relatively realistic. So that's the year-to-date target, what the rep achieved. In that particular example, they achieved exactly what we asked them. So the numbers for the target and the actuals are the same, both for the months and accumulatively for the quarter. The commission pay is, because the target and the actual are the same, is 100%. and what's the pay is. So the first pay is $4,600, which is 80% of a third of 17.5. Second month, again, 80% of 17.5. And then in March, because it's true up, okay, we took the 350 out of 350, it's 17.5, right? We only paid 8 of 17, 9.2 of the 17.5, so we have to pay the difference. So in March, the rep get $8,000, and the total for the quarter is 100% of target pay. Clear? Clear. Look at what happened. They got some money in the month to pay their check. They got money to pay the check, but in March, they get both the pay, 100% of the pay for March, plus 20% of each of the other months. So they get reward, right? They get suddenly twice as much in the paycheck. This is outside of their base salary to pay the bills. So it's very nice. They achieved their goal. They got paid as planned, and March was a nice pay. Okay, this is have a positive effect on their psychology. Questions on the basic example? No, perfect. Okay, now sometimes there is not so good months. So I took another example, artificially simple, of a quarter that was not that good. So again, the target the same, 100, 120, 130, but the actual is not as good. For the first month is 80 of the 100. For the second month is 96 of the 120. And on the third month, it's 104 of the 130, which happened to be 80% of the target each month, okay, for simplicity purposes. So here is the target in accumulated fashion, 100 to 20, 350, just like in the upper example. But the accumulated actual is 80, 176, and 280. We missed target by 20%. Look what happened to commission. In the first month, they get paid the flat 80%, so it's the same 4.6 as up here. Second month, again flat, unrelated to results, they still get 4.6, okay? But in the third month, we do the true up, we calculate for the entire quarter, and for the entire quarter, they only achieve 80%. So you said they should have received 80% of commission. The answer is no, because we only start paying at 50%, means that each percentage above 50, there is 2% of commission, right? So if they achieved 80% of their sales, they miss 20, they're going to miss twice as much commission. So they only get 60%. Okay? It's a very amplified, almost punitive behavior, right? For not achieving your sales. And they get only $1.1 thousand in the third month, and total of $10,000 of what they could be 17.5. So they missed so much more than 20% by not meeting the target. Okay, it's an exaggerated commission behavior. It's punitive in a strong way. So they know how to, it feeds the eagles practically. Okay, that's what it does. This example makes sense? Okay. Third example is the other way, overachievement. So in this example I took, again, the same 100, 120, 130. Actual, I gave first month's miss, 80, but second month's 140 overachieve. Third month's 170 overachieve again. So the target, accumulatively 120, 220, 350, we know that. But the actual was 80, then 220, you see, break even, and then overachievement 390, 111% above plan. What's the pay? So for January, 80%, 4.67. For February, again, 80%, a mistake here, 4.67, because it's a flat rate. So please ignore the 100%. Why it's using this? I think I copied the other one. Yeah. I'm sorry, I have the wrong slide here. In general, what it should say here, right, that for 100%, we pay $17.5 thousand, but there is $40,000 overachievement. So we take the 17.5, which is meeting the 100%. Then we take the delta, which is 390 was achieved for 350 target. It's $40,000. And here I give 15% on sales. Instead of, the regular 10, I give 50% more. So it's $6,000. And this rep will get 17.5 at the 100%, but another 6 for the overachievement, which is unproportionately high, totaling $23,500. Okay, so that drives them for overachievement every quarter. They try to get to the overachievement because the big money is in the overachievement. Okay, so that's that example. You see here that the second half, we have twice amplification, and on the overachievement, we have 3 times amplification in that particular example. Okay, make sense? I should switch that visual. I don't know why I have the wrong one. So that's overachievement play in a growth scenario.
Okay, Gilad, we have a question here, and I see that they open a discussion on it, so maybe we can look on it. So, yeah.
Let's start. There is a lot of things.
Are those dollars from Ed? Yeah.
Let's start. Okay. Are those dollars lost for the rep when they don't achieve 100% or they do the chance to regroup software? Great question. So the minimum time period I recommend to think about is 1 quarter, just like in the example. So that's why I don't calculate commission in January and February, and I only true up in March. Now goes again April, May, and then true up in June. For a very unstable business, right? Very early on, big fluctuation, I leave it quarterly. I will not carry over the reward or the penalty between 1 quarter to another, because we got to focus the reps on a very unstable environment. As the business grows and things are more predictable, then we can increase the period of true up. Although we pay true up quarterly, we can not change the quotas in a longer period. So we can give them a half-year quota or 1 year quota. When the business gets to 30, 40, $50 million, you can start giving them an entire year quota. I'll still break it down to monthly targets. I'll still true up quarterly, but I'll carry over the delta, either positive or negative, between quarter and quarter until the end of the year. I will never carry over between 2 years. New year is a new quota. You don't carry over from last year, then it's never ending, becoming banking business. Okay, not a good thing.
Okay, we have another question from John.
Yeah, can you read the question? I can follow.
Yeah, of course. In the last example, how do you handle an underperforming rep who technically owe you money in the 3 months? Won't this demotivate the rep for the next quarter of the deficit carry over the quarter 2? So they have to dig out of a hole.
Of a hole, yes. Very good question. So the question here, that's a true up problem. If we true up not on a quarterly, but on a whole year, and you had a good quarter, then a really bad quarter, we true up. So I'll step back. Let's say first, excessive example. First quarter was amazing, and the rep got overachievement money, which is, of course, more than the proportional pay they'll get normally. Then second quarter is a horrible quarter. They don't get almost any commission. And when you true up for the year, right, for the entire 6 months, they find themselves owning money back to the company. That's the question at stake. Rule number 1, never ask the rep actually to write a check to the company. If they're bad, fire them, okay? Don't ask them to pay back. It never works. They'll become miserable, and they'll spend the rest of their life trying to badmouth the company, okay? That's the first thing. Second thing, if it's a good rep, but something happened in the territory, often I will just keep the negative throughout the year, give them a chance to recoup, and in the end of the year, cancel the punitive if they recovered, or if they did not recover, make them assume the responsibility for this quarter if I understand the behavior, and it's just one rep. It's okay. Bad year, bad performance. If it's something more systemic And many reps are missing their quota. And there is across the board problem. Let's say half the reps are problem. Then it's not the reps problem. It's the company problem. It could be competition. It could be something in manufacturing. It could be something in reimbursement. It could be something in our marketing message. And then I will do what I call a correction, and I'll forgive the performance to everybody that had a performance issue. And Jeff, I see Jeff Schmidt is on the call. We've done it many times, then because you cannot just have the reps be responsible for a manufacturing defect or a reimbursement challenge or a big competitive move. It will demotivate them to death. So you forgive the losses and you focus them on the next quarter to re-achieve what the company wants to achieve. Now, of course, if it's one rep and it's a behavioral problem, too bad, you held them responsible. But you don't ask them to write a check to the company. That's not a good thing.
Okay, and we have more question. The next question is from Ayelet. How do you deal with sales team tendency to commit to conservative target to ensure they can achieve the numbers?
Yeah, you give them the numbers. You don't ask them what the numbers are. So a good sales leader or a CEO needs to understand their numbers, need to do a lot of analytics to know the numbers, both statistically and locally, and provide targets that are challenging but achievable. And if you made a mistake, it's okay. Always make mistakes. You take the time to correct the targets as a dialogue with the reps. You don't just stick to your guns because you tell them, but it's your call. You make the numbers. You do bottom up, you do top down. But in the end, when you sure that your numbers are reasonable, you chase them. And then it's your call. And if you made a mistake, correct the mistake, both up or down. Much easier to correct down than to correct up. So be careful, be conservative. Okay, always try to shoot a bit higher, but not so high that it's become unachievable, because then people will not believe you and will not focus and even try. Okay, other question?
We have last question. How long is a sales journey? And I also update that we have 5 last minutes. Okay.
Yeah. Sales journeys really depends when you are in your maturity curve as a company, as a product. So, but a typical, I would say, product that is already commercial and already been around for a couple of years. So it's not just a beta testing or something very fresh. A rep takes about 3 to 6 months to know the product, to know their pitch, to try the sales process, to learn the objection handling. So it's not uncommon that we will give rep the first quarter. We'll give them what we call commission protection. They'll get 80% of commission regardless of results. I would try not to give 6 or 9 months typically, because then what they'll do, they learn the business and then wait, accumulate the POs. And when they'll get to the commission live, you'll get overachievement in the first quarter. So be very careful with that. But it really depends on how complex the product is. So few last things. Few questions that typically come up in the growth area is, why not pay on a monthly quota, right? Why to true up every quarter? And typically just, it's easy to manipulate if you don't true up. So if you pay per quarter, it's easy for the rep to keep orders for the next quarter, prevent order to the next order, but they can't prevent a customer to order for 3 months because customer needs product. So that's why I like the quarter and I don't like the months. Why not true up on a monthly? Just too much work. If you true up every month, it's just finance go crazy. So we true up every quarter and we're managing the risk by paying the first and second months as a fixed 80%. Why not true up every 6 months or a year? Because it's even less work. It's because it's too far. You keep the number artificial for 6 months, it's forever. Reps don't have the link between their performance and their pay for too long. It's not good either. Okay. I mentioned hardware. So in a hybrid business that you have hardware and disposable, my learning is that I leave the hardware out of the quota. I give fixed rate on the hardware, 10%, 12%, 15%, and focus on disposable as a quota. When you put hardware, the fluctuation become too big. You know, you sold one more hardware and you're in overachievement. You sold one less hardware and you didn't meet your quota. It's not healthy. So we keep it out and we give flat rate on the hardware and the variable 50% driven commission on the disposable. To push hardware sales, you can give what I call increasingly steps. The first hardware you sell the quarter is 10%. The second hardware this quarter is 12%. Shouldn't make it too big because they'll try to concentrate all the hardware in the same one quarter, but make a nice incremental step so they incentivize to close more deals as the quarter comes in. And the last warning is never, ever commission on placements or demos. The only thing will happen is that you'll have tons of completely irrelevant and ineffective placement or demos. Don't try it at home, never works. Seen it 100 times, not a good idea. Questions? Okay.
Yes, there is a question, Gilad.
Yeah.
From John. Okay, the last question. I see Jeff is for a pre-revenue company just launching a product. How do you? Okay, no, okay. I don't see the last question. I think he did it.
Then I take the last minute to say few technicalities on commission that are important. They're advanced but important. Number one, we learn that if you do a true up and overachievement, you need to keep 10% hold up to manage those fluctuations. Because if you trust the reps to mentally manage the fluctuation, it's sometimes difficult and they get really upset. So when we pay commission every month, we keep 10% as a hold up at the company. We let the fluctuation run. And in the end of the year, we released whatever is the balance. So the 10% minus the negative or plus the positive, and that reduces the actual fluctuation for the rep by the end of the year. In the beginning, they ask you a question, but when they get used to it, everybody is happy. You know, it's like in the stock exchange, when there is too much fluctuation, the trade is limited. We do the same here. Highly recommended. Put it in the contract. It's a good practice. Big mistakes of Israeli startups is that they pay on collection. Reps do not know how to collect money. It's not what you want them to focus on. It's not what they train to do. Outside of very specific situation that you sell to a consumer type outlet like a single family offices, doctors. But in our business, you mostly sell to hospitals, to health systems. They pay on time. Reps are not great in collection. It creates too much of a gap between their performance and the pay because the pay cycle. Hire one finance person, ask them to be expert on collection and leave the reps alone. Pay them on shipping, not on booking, but on shipping. It by far the most effective medical device and digital health plan. Allow yourself a mid-year revision. 1 year is big time. Things happen. Allow yourself in the contract to change the commission in the middle of the year. Don't use it often. It's not great, but if you need to, you can do it. Remember, in the US, in most states, far majority, I think 49 or 48 of the states, commission structure is guaranteed or secured by law. So everything you say or do is becoming a commitment that is legally binding. So make sure every year you issue on time a very clear and updated commission letter to the reps. If not, they will sit at home and see you by the end of the year and you'll have to pay. So commission letters and the management of the commission letters are legally critical in our business. And the last piece, give the reps tools to imagine or to hope for what they can do. So create for them commission calculators so they can put in, what if I'll do that sales, how much money would I make? If I'll do that much sales, how much money do I make? They love playing with this. They become rich on Excel, and then they try to get it done. So give them that opportunity, and the simpler your commission plan, the more effective that imagination can happen, and then more sales you get. That's it for today. I know it's a complex topic. but it's really critical for driving sales. And today you got an advanced course in commission. If there are any questions, write to us. We'll try to answer. Thanks for joining today.
Thank you, Gilad. And thank you everyone for joining us.
Thank you.